The rain hammered against the makeshift shelter of twisted metal and torn canvas that Zephyra called home. Deep in the abandoned industrial district of New Geneva, where even the scavengers rarely ventured, the young dragon curled her silver-scaled body into the smallest space possible. At barely the size of a large horse, she was pathetically small for her kind, a fact that her clan had reminded her of daily before casting her out 6 months ago. Worthless runt, her mother's voice still echoed in her mind. Dragons are meant to be mighty, feared, respected. You're nothing but a burden. Zephyra pressed her snout against the cold ground, feeling the familiar ache of loneliness settle in her chest. The other dragons had impressive abilities. Her brother could melt steel with his flame, her sister could fly faster than military jets, her cousins could lift entire buildings with their strength. But Zephyra? Her fire barely warmed soup, she could barely stay airborne for more than a few minutes, and her strength was laughably weak compared to other dragons. The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze. Humans occasionally wandered into this area, usually up to no good. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, hoping whoever it was would pass by without noticing her shelter. "Are you sure the readings are coming from around here?" a woman's voice asked, crisp and professional. "Absolutely certain, Dr. Chen," replied a younger male voice. "The thermal signatures don't match any known industrial equipment in this area. Whatever's generating this heat pattern is biological." Zephyra's heart raced. They were looking for her. She'd been so careful to keep her heat signature low, barely using her flame at all. But, apparently, it hadn't been enough. "Ma'am, I'm picking up movement in that collapsed warehouse," the young man continued. "Definitely something large." Dr. Chen is Sarah Chen. According to the ID badge Zephyra could see through a gap in her shelter, was a human woman in her late 30s with short black hair and intense brown eyes. She wore a practical field jacket over what looked like military fatigues, and carried a tablet that beeped softly as she moved. "I know you're there," Dr. Chen called out, her voice surprisingly gentle. "We're not here to hurt you. I'm a xenobiologist with the Human Integration Council. My name is Sarah, and this is my research assistant, Marcus." Zephyra remained motionless. She'd heard of the Human Integration Council. They were the organization responsible for managing relations between humanity and the various alien species that had made contact with Earth over the past decade. Most of those species were technologically advanced, offering humanity new sciences and technologies in exchange for resources or territory. Dragons, however, were considered a nuisance species, powerful but primitive, with no advanced technology to offer. "The thermal readings suggest you're injured or exhausted," Sarah continued, taking a step closer. "Whatever species you are, we can help. The council has medical facilities, food, shelter." "I'm just a worthless dragon," Zephyra whispered, so quietly she wasn't sure the humans could hear her. "No one needs dragons. We don't have anything valuable to offer your kind." But Sarah's enhanced hearing equipment picked up the words clearly. "A dragon? Marcus, are you recording this?" "Yes, ma'am. First documented dragon contact in this sector." Sarah knelt down about 10 feet from Zephyra's hiding spot. "What's your name? And why do you think you're worthless?" Despite every instinct telling her to flee, something in the human's voice made Zephyra lift her head slightly. "I'm Zephyra. And I'm worthless because I can't do anything right. I can't fly properly, my fire is weak, I'm small, and I don't have any of the abilities that make dragons useful." "Useful for what?" Sarah asked, her scientist's curiosity evident. "For anything. For fighting, for moving heavy things, for melting metal, for intimidating enemies. My own family cast me out because I was just taking up space and resources without contributing anything." Zephyra's voice cracked with old pain. Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. "Zephyra, would you be willing to come out and talk with us face to face? I promise we won't hurt you." "Why would you want to talk to me?" "I told you, I'm useless." "Because I'm an engineer as well as a biologist," Sarah said with a smile in her voice. "And, in my experience, the things that seem useless are often the most interesting. They just haven't found their proper application yet." Slowly, hesitantly, Zephyra emerged from her shelter. In the dim light of the cloudy afternoon, her silver scales caught what little sunlight filtered through the smog, creating an almost ethereal shimmer. She was indeed small for a dragon, perhaps 12 feet from nose to tail tip, with delicate features and wings that seemed almost gossamer thin compared to the thick, leathery wings of her relatives. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. You're beautiful, she said softly, and meant it. Zephyra's head jerked up in surprise. No one had ever called her beautiful before. Runty, yes. Weak, certainly. Disappointing, constantly. But, beautiful? Marcus, are you seeing this? Sarah whispered into her comm unit. Look at the wing structure, those aren't built for the heavy lifting flight pattern we've observed in other dragons. This is something completely different. Different how? Zephyra asked, a tiny spark of hope flickering in her chest. Sarah approached slowly, her tablet extended. Would you mind if I took some readings? I won't touch you without permission, but I'd like to understand your physiology better. I suppose, Zephyra said uncertainly. But you won't find anything interesting. I'm just a failed dragon. Let me be the judge of that, Sarah said firmly. Marcus, start with thermal imaging, then move to density scans. I want to understand why her wing loading ratio is so different from the specimens in our database. As the humans worked, taking readings and making notes, Sarah kept up a steady stream of gentle questions. Where was Zephyra from? How long had she been alone? What exactly made her family consider her a failure? My flame can barely light a campfire, Zephyra explained, demonstrating with a tiny puff of blue-white fire that flickered and died almost immediately. My brother can melt through a tank with his breath. Sarah's eyes widened. Marcus, did you catch the spectral analysis of that flame? Yes, ma'am. That's not normal dragon fire at all. What do you mean? Zephyra asked. Sarah consulted her tablet, excitement growing in her voice. Dragon fire typically burns at around 2000 degrees Celsius and produces a standard combustion spectrum. Your flame just registered at 4500 degrees Celsius with an unusual blue-white signature that indicates complete molecular combustion. But it's so small and weak, Zephyra protested. It's not weak, it's concentrated. And efficient. Your brother's flame might be able to melt a tank, but it would take him several seconds and a lot of energy. Your flame could cut through the same tank in a fraction of the time using a fraction of the fuel. Sarah's voice was filled with the enthusiasm of discovery. This isn't a weakness, this is precision engineering. Zephyra blinked in confusion. But I can barely keep it going for more than a second or two. Because you're trying to use it like a traditional dragon flame as a weapon of brute force. But what if it's not meant for that? What if it's meant for delicate work, for precision applications? I don't understand. Sarah gestured to her tablet. In human engineering, we have tools that produce massive amounts of heat for gross applications, blast furnaces, welding torches, things like that. But we also have precision tools, laser cutters, plasma torches, that produce incredible heat in very controlled, focused applications. Your flame isn't the blast furnace, Zephyra. It's the precision instrument. But what good is precision if I can't lift heavy things or fly properly? Let's find out about that flying, Sarah said. Would you be willing to take a short flight? Just around this area? Zephyra looked embarrassed. I can barely stay up for a few minutes, and I'm not very fast. Humor me. Marcus, set up the motion tracking equipment. Reluctantly, Zephyra spread her delicate wings and launched herself into the air. To her own critical eye, her flight was pathetic, wobbly, uncertain, lacking the power and grace of her siblings. She managed perhaps 3 minutes in the air before exhaustion forced her to land. But Sarah was practically vibrating with excitement as she studied the data. Marcus, tell me you got clear readings on that flight pattern. Every second of it, Dr. Chen. The maneuverability indices are off the charts. What are you talking about? Zephyra asked, panting slightly from the exertion. You think you're a poor flyer because you can't stay aloft for hours or fly in straight lines at high speed, Sarah explained. But look at this data. In those 3 minutes, you performed 17 maneuvers that would be impossible for a larger dragon. You can turn on a dime, stop mid-flight, even fly backwards for short distances. So what? That doesn't help with anything useful. Zephyra, the human military would kill for aircraft that could perform those maneuvers. And your size isn't a weakness, it's an advantage for precision work. You can fit into spaces larger dragons never could, maneuver in tight quarters, perform delicate tasks without the risk of accidentally crushing something valuable. For the first time in her life, Zephyra began to see herself through different eyes.
You really think I might be useful for something? I think you might be exactly what we've been looking for, Sarah said seriously.
The Integration Council has been struggling with a problem for months now. We're working on joint projects with several alien species, and many of them require incredibly precise work in confined spaces, repairs to delicate alien technology, modifications to equipment that can't withstand rough handling, installation of components in areas too small for human engineers but too complex for simple robotics.
And you think I could do that kind of work? I think you could revolutionize it.
But first, we need to get you somewhere warm and safe, with proper food and rest.
Would you be willing to come with us to our research facility?
As a volunteer, not a test subject, with full rights and accommodations.
Zephyra hesitated. What if you're wrong? What if I really am just useless? Sarah smiled warmly.
Then, you'll be useless in comfort, with people who care about you and want to help you find your place in the world. But, Zephyra, I've been an engineer for 15 years, and I've learned to recognize potential when I see it.
You're not useless. You're specialized.
Specialized, Zephyra repeated the word wonderingly.
Every tool has its purpose, Sarah said gently. You just haven't found the right job yet.
As they loaded Zephyra's few possessions into their transport vehicle, the young dragon found herself thinking about Sarah's words. For the first time since her exile, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she might actually belong somewhere. The human facility awaiting her was unknown territory, but it couldn't be worse than the loneliness and self-doubt she was leaving behind. The rain had stopped, and thin shafts of sunlight were beginning to break through the clouds as their vehicle pulled away from the industrial district. Zephyra watched the abandoned buildings fade into the distance and wondered if this might be the beginning of something entirely new, not just for her, but for the future of human-dragon cooperation. Sarah glanced back at her passenger and smiled. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries were found in the places no one else thought to look. The Human Integration Council's research facility was nothing like what Zephyra had expected. Instead of cold, sterile laboratories filled with cages and monitoring equipment, she found herself in a comfortable living space specifically designed for her needs. The chamber had high ceilings to accommodate her wingspan, temperature controls that kept the environment at the perfect warmth for her metabolism, and even a small alcove filled with soft materials where she could nest comfortably. "This is really for me?" she asked Sarah, who was showing her around the facility.
"Completely. We've been working on adaptive housing for different species.
Yours is the first dragon-specific accommodation we've built, so if anything doesn't feel right, just let us know and we'll adjust it." Dr. Chen had changed out of her field gear into a practical lab coat, and Zephyra could see the genuine kindness in her eyes as she explained the facility's purpose.
"We're not here to study you like a lab rat, Zephyra.
We're here to help you develop your abilities and find where you fit best in our cooperative efforts with other species."
Other species live here too? Some do, some just visit for consultations.
We have a crystalline engineer named Prism who's been working with us on mineral analysis. Their species can literally see the molecular structure of metals. There's also a voidwalker called Echo who helps us with spatial calculations that human minds struggle with.
And, just last week, we had a delegation of the plant-like Verdani helping us design more efficient hydroponic systems.
The idea that other non-human species were valued for their unique abilities made Zephyra feel less alone.
And, you think I might fit in with them?
I think you might exceed all of them in your specialized area, Sarah said confidently. But, first, let's run some proper tests to understand exactly what your capabilities are.
Are you ready for that? The testing began the next morning in a specially designed workshop that Sarah had hastily assembled overnight.
The space was filled with various pieces of equipment, materials, and what looked like broken alien technology. "These are some of the projects we've been struggling with," Sarah explained, gesturing to a table covered with intricate devices. "This piece here is part of a crystalline communication array. It's incredibly delicate, the components are arranged at the molecular level, and any vibration or excessive heat destroys the crystalline matrix.
We've been trying to repair it for 3 months." Zephyra approached the device cautiously.
It was beautiful in its complexity, like a three-dimensional geometric puzzle made of materials that seemed to shift and change in the light.
"What's wrong with it? See this hairline fracture running through the central crystal? It's smaller than a human hair, but it's disrupted the entire energy flow. We need to seal it without disturbing the surrounding matrix. And regular dragon fire would destroy it? Instantly." the heat would cause thermal expansion that would shatter the entire structure. But, your flame.
Sarah pulled up readings on her tablet. Your flame might be precise enough to fuse just that crack without affecting anything else. Zephyra studied the device more carefully. The crack was incredibly fine, barely visible to the naked eye. I don't know if I can control my fire that precisely.
That's what we're here to find out. Start with something less valuable first.
Sarah led her to another table where several pieces of human technology lay broken.
These are damaged circuit boards from our own equipment.
Same principle, we need to repair tiny connections without damaging the surrounding components.
For the next several hours, Zephyra practiced. At first, her flame was too broad, too hot, destroying more than it fixed.
But, gradually, under Sarah's patient guidance, she learned to focus it down to a pinpoint of intense heat that could weld microscopic components without affecting anything nearby. Incredible, Marcus breathed, watching through magnifying equipment as Zephyra perfectly repaired a connection no wider than a strand of hair.
Dr. Chen, the precision is beyond anything our best equipment can achieve.
Because our equipment is designed for human hands and human thinking, Sarah replied. Zephyra's working on an entirely different scale.
Watch how she moves, she's not thinking in terms of gross motor movements like we do.
Her entire nervous system is calibrated for this kind of delicate work.
By midday, Zephyra had successfully repaired 6 different pieces of human technology.
More importantly, she was beginning to understand how her abilities worked. It wasn't that her flame was weak, it was that it was controllable in ways that larger, more powerful dragon flames could never be. I think I'm ready to try the crystalline device, she said, surprised by her own confidence.
Sarah nodded approvingly. Take your time. Study it first, understand the structure, then, make your approach.
Zephyra spent nearly an hour examining the communication array from every angle. She could see how the energy flowed through the crystalline matrix, how the fracture interrupted that flow, and exactly where she needed to apply heat to seal the crack without disturbing the delicate molecular arrangements around it. When she finally acted, it was with absolute precision. A single, hair-thin line of blue-white flame touched the fracture for less than 2 seconds. The crack sealed perfectly, and the device immediately began to hum with restored energy.
It's working, Sarah whispered in amazement. Zephyra, it's actually working. You just accomplished in 2 seconds what our best engineers couldn't do in 3 months. But, Zephyra was already moving to the next challenge.
What about that one, she asked, pointing to what looked like a cube of metal covered in intricate patterns.
That's a Void Walker navigation component.
It's supposed to calculate spatial coordinates for their faster-than-light travel, but something's wrong with the internal geometry.
The patterns on the surface should glow when it's functioning properly. May I? Zephyra asked, and, at Sarah's nod, she began examining the device. This problem was different.
It wasn't about repairing damage, but about understanding function.
As Zephyra studied the cube, she realized that her small size was actually an advantage here too. She could see the device from angles that larger beings couldn't, could identify patterns and relationships that might be invisible to someone viewing it from further away. I think some of these internal components are misaligned, she said after several minutes of careful study. They should connect here and here, but they're slightly offset. How can you tell? Marcus asked.
The patterns on the surface, they're like a map of the internal structure.
And they don't quite line up the way they should.
Zephyra extended one delicate claw, smaller and more precise than any human tool.
If I could just adjust this component slightly.
Working with infinite care, she managed to realign the internal mechanisms without damaging the incredibly complex device. When she finished, the cube immediately began to glow with soft, pulsing light.
Outstanding! Sarah exclaimed. Zephyra, do you realize what you've just done?
You've solved 2 problems that our entire engineering department couldn't figure out, and you did it in 1 day. But, this is just simple mechanical work, Zephyra protested, though she was glowing with pride at the praise.
Simple? Sarah laughed.
Zephyra, these devices represent some of the most advanced technology in known space. The crystallines and void walkers are ancient species with millions of years of technological development.
And, you're calling their engineering simple mechanical work? Well, when you really look at them, they're just machines, aren't they?
They work according to principles, and if you understand the principles, you can fix the problems.
Sarah and Marcus stared at her.
Zephyra, Sarah said slowly, I think you might have an intuitive understanding of engineering principles that most beings have to study for decades to acquire.
That's impossible. I'm just a failed dragon. No, Sarah said firmly.
You're an engineer who happens to be a dragon.
There's a huge difference.
The rest of the day passed in a blur of successful repairs and modifications.
Zephyra worked on everything from delicate Verdani biocircuits to complex quantum Fock probability calculators.
Each device presented new challenges, but also new opportunities to apply her unique combination of precision, size, and intuitive understanding. As evening approached, Sarah called a halt to the testing.
That's enough for today. You've exceeded every expectation I had. Really?
Zephyra asked, still hardly daring to believe it.
Really?
Zephyra, in one day you've solved 7 different engineering problems that have been stumping our teams for months.
You've demonstrated abilities that no other species we work with possesses. And, more than that, you seem to genuinely enjoy the work.
It was true. For the first time in her life, Zephyra had felt truly useful, truly needed. The intricate problems hadn't frustrated her, they'd energized her. Each successful repair had built her confidence, and each new challenge had excited rather than intimidated her.
What happens now? She asked.
Now we start building you a proper workshop, Sarah said with a grin.
Because I have a feeling we're going to be very busy.
Word is already getting out about what you accomplished today, and I suspect we're going to have representatives from a dozen different species wanting to work with you.
Work with me? Not just use me to fix their things?
Work with you, Sarah confirmed.
As a partner, as an expert in your field.
Zephyra, you're not just useful, you're irreplaceable. That night, as Zephyra settled into her comfortable quarters, she reflected on how much her life had changed in just 24 hours. The loneliness and despair of the abandoned industrial district seemed like a distant memory. For the first time since her exile, she felt like she belonged somewhere. More than that, she felt needed. Not despite her differences from other dragons, but because of them. Sarah had been right, she wasn't a failed dragon. She was something entirely new, something unique and valuable. As sleep took her, Zephyra's dreams were filled with the intricate patterns of alien technology and the satisfaction of problems solved through precision and care. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove that even the smallest dragon could make the biggest difference. 3 weeks after Zephyra's arrival at the Integration Council facility, her workshop had become the busiest place in the entire complex. The space had been expanded twice to accommodate the steady stream of alien technology that required her unique touch, and Sarah had assigned 2 full-time assistants to help manage the workflow. Zephyra, we have a situation, Sarah announced as she entered the workshop early one morning, followed by a tall, crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns across the walls. The young dragon looked up from the Verdani bioprocessor she was carefully recalibrating. Over the past weeks, she had grown more confident in her abilities, but she still felt a flutter of nervousness when meeting new species.
What kind of situation?
This is Resonance, a senior engineer from the Crystalline Collective, Sarah explained.
They've brought us a problem that's, well, it's beyond anything we've attempted before. Resonance's voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Honored Dragon Engineer Zephyra, our people have heard of your remarkable abilities. We come to you with a request that may determine the fate of our entire colony ship.
Zephyra blinked in surprise.
Colony ship?
The Crystalline Collective has been traveling to a new star system, Sarah explained. But their navigation core has developed a critical malfunction. They're stranded between star systems, and their life support systems are beginning to fail.
Resonance's crystalline form dimmed slightly with distress.
The navigation core is our most sacred technology, built over thousands of years by our greatest artisans. It contains quantum crystalline matrices that exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously.
Even our own engineers cannot fully comprehend its complexity. And you want me to repair it?
Zephyra asked, feeling suddenly small despite all her recent successes.
We want you to try, Resonance said gently.
Because if you cannot, then 50,000 of my people will die in the void between stars. The weight of that responsibility settled on Zephyra's shoulders like a physical burden.
Where is this navigation core?
That's the problem, Sarah said. It's aboard their colony ship, which is currently 3 days away by faster-than-light transport. And, the core itself is massive, too large to bring here.
You would have to go to them. Alone?
Zephyr's voice was barely a whisper.
Not alone, Sarah said firmly. I'd be coming with you, along with a full support team. But, yes, you'd be the only one who could actually attempt the repair. Zephyra was quiet for several minutes, thinking.
In the weeks since arriving at the facility, she had grown comfortable with the controlled environment of her workshop. The idea of leaving, of venturing into space to work on technology that even its creators didn't fully understand, was terrifying. But, then, she thought about 50,000 crystalline beings, stranded and dying in the cold darkness between stars. People who had heard of her abilities and were calling on her for help. How could she refuse?
I'll do it, she said quietly. Are you certain? Resonance asked. We do not wish to force this burden upon you.
Someone needs me, Zephyr said, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. For the first time in my life, someone really, truly needs what I can do.
Of course I'll try. The journey to the crystalline colony ship was Zephyr's first experience with faster-than-light travel.
The human transport vessel was equipped with a specially modified chamber for her comfort, and Sarah remained by her side throughout the 3-day journey, helping her prepare for what they might find.
The challenge won't just be technical, Sarah explained as they studied detailed scans of the navigation core.
You'll be working in an environment designed for crystalline physiology. The air will be thinner than you're used to, the lighting will be different, and the gravity will be about 60% of Earth normal.
Will that affect my abilities? We don't know.
That's why we brought backup equipment and alternative approaches. But, Zephyra, I want you to remember something important. If you can't fix this, it won't be because you failed. This is the most complex piece of technology any of us has ever encountered.
When they arrived at the colony ship, Zephyra was amazed by its beauty.
The vessel was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and its crystalline hull caught and refracted starlight in spectacular patterns. But, even from a distance, she could see that something was wrong. The light patterns were irregular, flickering in ways that suggested systemic failures throughout the ship. The docking bay they used was clearly designed for much larger vessels, making Zephyra feel tiny as they disembarked. A delegation of crystalline engineers met them, their forms dimmed with worry and exhaustion. The situation has worsened since we contacted you, the lead engineer, Harmony, explained as they traveled through the ship's corridors.
The navigation core's malfunction is spreading to other systems.
We estimate perhaps 6 days before total life support failure. The navigation core itself was housed in a vast chamber at the heart of the ship. When Zephyra first saw it, she gasped in wonder and terror. The core was a structure of impossible complexity, crystalline formations that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, connected by energy flows that made her eyes water to follow, all surrounding a central matrix that pulsed with sickly, irregular light.
The central matrix is the problem, Harmony explained.
It should pulse exactly 847 times per standard minute in a precise harmonic pattern.
But, as you can see, the timing is irregular, and the pattern is chaotic.
Zephyra studied the core for hours, trying to understand its structure. Unlike the smaller devices she had worked on before, this wasn't just a machine, it was almost organic in its complexity, a living crystal that had grown over millennia into a form that served as both computer and navigator.
I can see the disharmony, she said finally. But, I don't understand what's causing it. The crystal structure looks perfect to me. Look deeper, Resonance urged gently.
With eyes designed for detail, not for grand scope. Following this advice, Zephyra began to examine the core from unusual angles, using her small size to get perspectives that larger beings couldn't achieve. It was then that she noticed something curious, tiny imperfections in the crystal matrix that were almost invisible, hairline flaws that seemed to be propagating slowly throughout the structure. There, she said, pointing with one delicate claw.
And there. These microscopic fractures, they're spreading through the matrix like a virus.
The crystalline engineers gathered around her, straining to see what she was pointing at.
We cannot perceive such small details, Harmony admitted. Are you certain? Absolutely. And, I think I know what caused them. Zephyra had been thinking about the problem while she studied the core. You said this ship has been traveling for decades. Has it encountered any unusual gravitational fields or spatial anomalies? We passed through the edge of a black hole's event horizon approximately 40 standard years ago, Resonance confirmed.
It was necessary to reach this trajectory toward our destination.
That's it, Zephyra said with growing excitement. The gravitational stress from that encounter created microscopic fractures in your navigation core.
They've been slowly propagating ever since, and now they're finally affecting the core's function.
Can you repair such damage? Harmony asked hopefully. Zephyra considered the problem carefully.
The fractures were incredibly tiny, but there were thousands of them spread throughout the massive structure.
Traditional repair methods would take years and might not even work. But her flame.
I can't repair them all individually, she said.
But I might be able to do something else. Your core is essentially one massive crystal, right? What if I could convince it to heal itself? We do not understand.
Crystals grow, Zephyra explained.
They're self-organizing structures.
If I can provide exactly the right kind of energy at exactly the right points, I might be able to stimulate the crystal to grow new material that fills in all the fractures simultaneously.
Sarah's voice crackled through the communication system. Zephyra, that's incredibly dangerous.
If you miscalculate the energy input, you could trigger a cascade failure that destroys the entire core. And if I don't try, 50,000 people die in 6 days, Zephyra replied calmly.
I understand the risk.
But I also understand crystals now, and I think this could work. The process she had in mind would require her to interface directly with the navigation core, using her flame to stimulate crystal growth at dozens of specific points simultaneously. It would demand more precision than she had ever attempted, and it would require her to work for hours without a break.
I'll need perfect environmental control, she told the assembled engineers. The slightest vibration or temperature fluctuation could throw off the crystal growth pattern.
And I'll need absolute silence. I have to listen to the harmonic resonance of the core to know exactly when and where to apply stimulation. The crystalline engineers worked frantically to prepare the chamber according to her specifications.
Meanwhile, Sarah helped Zephyra practice the complex sequence of flame applications she would need to perform, using smaller crystal samples to test the technique.
Remember, Sarah said as the time for the attempt approached, if anything goes wrong, stop immediately.
We'd rather try a different approach than lose you.
I won't fail, Zephyra said with quiet confidence.
Not when so many people are depending on me.
She approached the navigation core and extended her senses, feeling for the harmonic frequencies that indicated the crystal's natural growth patterns. Then, working with infinite care and precision, she began the delicate process of stimulating the massive crystal matrix to heal itself. For 4 hours, Zephyra worked without pause. Her flame danced across the surface of the core in complex patterns, providing exactly the right energy at exactly the right moments to encourage new crystal growth. The crystalline engineers watched in amazement as the microscopic fractures began to fill with new crystal material, the chaotic light patterns slowly resolving into perfect harmony. When she finally stepped back, exhausted but triumphant, the navigation core was pulsing with steady, perfect rhythm.
The entire chamber seemed to hum with renewed vitality. It's working, Harmony whispered in amazement. The harmonic patterns are perfect. The matrix is completely stable.
Cheers echoed through the ship as word spread that their navigation systems were restored. But Zephyra barely heard them. She had proven to herself, beyond any doubt, that she wasn't just useful, she was irreplaceable. Her unique abilities had just saved 50,000 lives. As they prepared for the journey back to Earth, Resonance approached her with profound gratitude. Dragon Engineer Zephyra, our people will sing songs of your deeds for generations. You have given us back our future. I just did what I was built to do, Zephyra replied, but her voice was filled with quiet pride. She was no longer the worthless runt cast out by her own family.
She was an engineer, a problem solver, a savior of civilizations.
And this was only the beginning. 6 months after saving the crystalline colony ship, Zephyra had become something she never could have imagined, famous. Word of the small dragon who could repair impossible technology had spread throughout the galactic community, and representatives from dozens of species made regular pilgrimages to Earth seeking her expertise.
But fame wasn't what mattered to Zephyra.
What mattered was the constant stream of challenges that pushed her abilities to new heights, and the growing family of colleagues who valued her contributions. Her workshop had been expanded into an entire wing of the facility, and she now supervised a team of apprentice engineers from multiple species. Zephyra, we have visitors, Sarah announced one morning, her tone suggesting this was something special.
The young dragon looked up from the quantum probability engine she was modifying for the ethereal collective. More broken technology? Not exactly.
Sarah stepped aside to reveal three figures Zephyra had never expected to see again: her mother, brother, and sister, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the unfamiliar human facility.
Zephyra's first instinct was to flee.
The old feelings of inadequacy and shame came flooding back as she faced the family that had rejected her. But, then, she noticed something different in their postures, their expressions. The arrogance and dismissive superiority were gone, replaced by uncertainty and what might even have been humility.
"Hello, Zephyra," her mother, Tempest, said carefully. "You look well."
"I am well," Zephyra replied, surprised by how steady her voice was.
"What brings you to Earth?"
Her brother, Inferno, shifted uncomfortably.
"We've been hearing stories. About what you've been doing here. About the crystalline colony ship.
About how you've become the most sought-after engineer in known space," her sister, Cyclone, added quietly.
Zephyra waited, not making this easy for them.
She had learned much about dignity and self-worth in the past months.
"We wanted to see for ourselves," Tempest continued. "To understand how you found your place." "You mean how the runt found a way to be useful?"
Zephyra asked, her voice carefully neutral. The three larger dragons flinched at her words.
"We came to apologize," Inferno said abruptly. "What we did was wrong. How we treated you was wrong." "You told me I was worthless," Zephyra said simply.
"That dragons like me had no value."
"We were idiots," Cyclone burst out. "We were thinking like barbarians. All we could see was strength and size and the ability to destroy things. We couldn't recognize intelligence and precision and the ability to create."
Tempest stepped forward, her massive form dwarfing her small daughter.
"Zephyra, we failed you as a family.
We let our own limited understanding blind us to your true nature.
We cast out the most gifted of our children because we were too stupid to recognize her gifts." "And now you want me back?" Zephyra asked. "We want to make amends," Tempest said carefully. "We want to be proud of you the way we should have been all along. We want to be part of your life again, if you'll have us."
Zephyra studied their faces, seeing genuine regret and shame there. Part of her wanted to reject them as they had rejected her, to turn away and let them feel the pain of abandonment. But a larger part of her recognized that forgiveness was not weakness, it was strength.
"I forgive you," she said finally. "But I won't pretend the past didn't happen. You hurt me deeply, and that changed me. I'm not the same dragon you cast out."
"We can see that," Inferno said softly.
"You're confident, accomplished, respected. You've become everything we never imagined you could be."
"No," Zephyra corrected gently.
"I've become what I always was. You just couldn't see it." Before her family could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility.
Sarah's communication device crackled to life with urgent messages from the command center.
"We have an emergency," Sarah announced. "The Voidwalkers have sent a distress signal. Their entire civilization is facing extinction, and they're asking specifically for you."
Zephyra's family watched in amazement as their daughter immediately shifted into professional mode, the personal drama forgotten in the face of urgent need.
"What's the situation?"
Zephyra asked, already moving toward her equipment lockers.
"It's their homeworld," Sarah explained grimly. "They've been using a massive dimensional stabilizer for millennia to keep their planet anchored in normal space.
But something's gone wrong with it, and their world is beginning to phase out of this reality.
If we can't fix it, an entire planet with billions of inhabitants will disappear into dimensional void. How long do we have?" "Less than 48 hours before the phase shift becomes irreversible." Tempest found her voice first. "Zephyra, surely this is beyond even your abilities." "An entire planet is depending on me," Zephyra finished firmly. "Sarah, prep the fastest ship we have. And contact the quantum folk, we'll need their dimensional mathematics expertise."
As Zephyra began gathering her specialized tools, her family watched in stunned silence.
This was not the timid, uncertain young dragon they remembered.
This was a confident professional, someone who faced impossible challenges as a matter of course.
"Can we help?" Cyclone asked tentatively.
Zephyra paused in her preparations, considering.
"Actually, yes. I might need precise force application in several locations simultaneously.
Your strength could be useful if directed properly.
You want us to come with you? Inferno asked in surprise.
I want competent assistants who can follow precise instructions without question, Zephyra replied.
If that describes you, then, yes.
The journey to the Voidwalker homeworld took 18 hours, even with the fastest human transport available. During the trip, Zephyra studied the dimensional stabilizers designed with her family looking over her shoulder, trying to understand what they were seeing.
This is beyond anything I've ever imagined, Tempest admitted. How do you even begin to comprehend something like this? The same way you comprehend anything complex, Zephyra explained patiently. You break it down into smaller components, understand how each piece works, then, see how they fit together as a whole. Size and complexity don't change the fundamental approach.
But, the mathematics alone are just tools, like my flame or your strength.
You learn to use the tools you need for the job.
When they arrived at the Voidwalker homeworld, the situation was immediately apparent. The planet flickered in and out of visible reality, sometimes appearing solid and normal, sometimes becoming ghostly and transparent. The dimensional stabilizer, a structure the size of a mountain, was clearly malfunctioning, its energy patterns chaotic and unstable. The resonance matrix has been corrupted, the lead Voidwalker engineer, Phase, explained to Zephyra as they approached the stabilizer. We believe it was caused by a cascade failure in the primary harmonics generator. But, the internal structure is too complex for our repair techniques. Zephyra studied the massive device, her enhanced perception picking out details that others missed.
I can see the problem, she said after several minutes. The corruption is spreading through the matrix like a wave, but it's following predictable patterns. If I can intercept it at key nodes and correct the harmonic distortions. You'd need to work at 17 different locations simultaneously, Phase pointed out. And, the timing would have to be perfect. Any delay or mistiming would make the corruption worse.
That's where my family comes in, Zephyra said, turning to her relatives. I need you to position yourselves at specific coordinates and apply force exactly when I tell you to. No improvisation, no second guessing, just precise execution of my instructions. For the next 6 hours, Zephyra directed the most complex operation of her career. Using her flame to correct harmonic distortions while her family provided precisely timed physical adjustments to the stabilizer's massive components, she slowly worked her way through the corrupted matrix. The work required absolute coordination and trust. Tempest, Inferno, and Cyclone had to suppress their instincts to act independently and, instead, follow their smallest siblings' instructions without question. For them, it was a humbling experience watching Zephyra orchestrate a solution to a problem they couldn't even fully comprehend. Correction pulse in 3, 2, 1, mark. Zephyra called out as her flame touched a critical junction point while Inferno applied exactly 2.3 tons of pressure to a support strut half a mile away. Slowly, painstakingly, the chaotic energy patterns of the dimensional stabilizer began to resolve into harmony. The planet's flickering slowed, then stopped, as reality reasserted its grip on the world. When the work was finally complete, Zephyra was exhausted but triumphant. She had saved not just a colony ship or a single species, but an entire world with billions of inhabitants. You did it, Tempest breathed, looking at her daughter with a mixture of awe and pride she had never felt before. You actually did it. We did it, Zephyra corrected, including her family in the success. I couldn't have managed the timing without your help. But, you understood the problem, you devised the solution, you coordinated the entire effort, Cyclone pointed out. We just followed your orders. That's what teamwork means, Zephyra said gently. Everyone contributes what they can. As they prepared to leave the Voidwalker homeworld, Phase approached Zephyra with profound gratitude. Engineer Zephyra, you have given us back our existence. Our people will remember you for all time. Just doing what I was built for, Zephyra replied, but she was smiling. On the journey back to Earth, her family was unusually quiet. Finally, Tempest spoke up. We understand now why the galaxy speaks of you with such respect. You're not just gifted, you're miraculous. I'm just myself, Zephyra said. The same dragon I always was. No, Inferno said firmly. You're the dragon you always had the potential to be. We were just too blind to see it. The question is, Cyclone added, what do we do now? How do we make up for the years we wasted, the pain we caused? Zephyra considered this carefully.
You become better dragons, she said finally.
You learn to see potential in unexpected places. You help others find their true purpose instead of forcing them into predetermined roles.
You remember that strength comes in many forms. And you forgive us for being fools?
I already have, Zephyr said with quiet grace.
Because that's what family does.
As Earth came into view through the transport's windows, Zephyr reflected on how far she had come. From a rejected runt hiding in an abandoned warehouse to the most respected engineer in known space, but, more importantly, from someone who believed she was worthless to someone who knew her true value. The whispered voice that had once said "no one needs me" was silent now, replaced by the certain knowledge that she was not just needed, but irreplaceable. And that knowledge, more than any external validation, had given her the greatest gift of all, a true understanding of home.
Home wasn't where you came from.
Home was where you were valued for exactly who you were meant to be. And, for Zephyra, that home would always be wherever her skills were needed, her precision valued, and her unique gifts could make the universe a better place for everyone who lived in it. The small dragon had found her place in the vast cosmos, not despite her differences, but because of them. And, in doing so, she had proven that sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe isn't size or strength, it's finding where you truly belong.